transporting the victim. We have ambulances standing by at Lakeside Marina.
A busy summer for Lake Tahoe emergency crews who have gone on a record number of search and rescue missions, finding a record number of victims. The latest just yesterday, when the body of a 25-year-old man was recovered, a strong swimmer until he experienced the challenges of this lake.
Imagine a lake that gets millions of visitors per year. But deep down, no one knows the true mystery that has caused thousands of deaths. Will you visit a lake like this? Or would the paranoia get the best of you? A lake that was founded in 1844 with unsolvable mysteries after almost 2 centuries. Let's investigate and uncover the creepy mysteries and hidden secrets that you are definitely not ready for. The history of Lake Tahoe is a mystery in itself. In 1844, a famous senator, explorer, American investigator, and mapmaker, John C. Fremont, found this lake. But the history goes way before even Fremont. In the past, it was a home for the Native American tribes to fish, gather precious materials, and get herbs to make medicinal plants. Moving forward to 1844, as John C. Fremont was on his voyage to the west and marked Lake Tahoe as the crossing between the Sierras between Nevada and California. Today, millions of visitors visit Lake Tahoe for fun and for exploration purposes. They have no idea about its dark and bleak past. And it all started after Fremont founded this lake. This area became the home of everything, from crimes, businesses, and evil, to even a bustling little town that would become an industrial area. But why so? Well, after its neighboring city, Virginia, was founded with silver, this town became famous for lumber manufacturing. But being a new town, business would find its way, and that's where lodging and casino businesses took over. So from visitors, miners, and townspeople, it quickly became a bustling city. Lake Tahoe is also considered the largest alpine lake, which literally means that it is at a higher altitude. At a whopping incline of 6,225 feet, and one of the deepest depths of 1,644 to be exact, people have seen some creepy stuff, even sea monsters, and some of the most intimidating snakes, which we will talk about later in the video, so stay tuned. But for reference, it has always been a deep lake, deep enough to put the whole Empire State Building and most other mega skyscrapers from the world. And if you know wildlife experts, even they would agree that doing this would cause a lot of problems. Or, to put things into perspective, it can even put the whole state of California 14 inches deep. However, since its emergence, Lake Tahoe has been home to some of the most mysterious disappearances, murders, crimes, and let's just say a lot of creepy stuff. But even to this date, we can't specifically say what people 8,000 to 10,000 years ago utilized this lake for. But with time, the archaeological findings showed some of the most interesting findings in Lake Tahoe's history. Thousands of years ago, it was home to the Washoe tribe and their ancestors, who had been using this lake for fishing, milling sites, and even using it as a beautiful view due to the nature that surrounds this area. Now, in the Middle Ages, after the gold and silver rush, this area became a victim of resource extraction at a brutally high rate. And between 1860 and 1890, the forests between the entire basin were cut to fuel mining, tunnels, and more. Attempts to turn this lake into a national park were also made, but they failed miserably due to corruption and other internal conflicts. With time, Lake Tahoe became the home to business, but so was the crime attracted, and so did some scary creatures that have been surfacing in the lake, or at least have been seen in multiple reports. Spoiler alert, it is about to get dark. Real dark. Between the late 1800s and the 1900s, Lake Tahoe was home to lodging casinos, and you know, with casinos come the mafia. Whenever we talk about money being made, there's crime being done, and that is exactly what happened in that century in Lake Tahoe. You see, being a lake with such depth and mafia being around, the lake became one of the most ideal sites for executions. You might have seen games like Mafia 2 or movies like The Godfather. In all cases, a lot of the scenes showed dead bodies being thrown off into various lakes. And if you did not know, they were based on real stories starting from Lake Tahoe. We won't go too deep into the mafia business, but let's just say that after doing some of the heinous crimes on townspeople and other groups, they would dump the bodies right in the middle of the river so that no one would be able to find them. But if you know crime, you know that dead bodies float on the water, right? Well, the mafia were so evil that they would weigh someone down and throw them into the deepest depths of water. What a brutal way to kill someone. However, there's another secret. The mafia isn't the only group responsible for dumping these bodies in the lake. Some mysteries are unsolved, starting from Mark Robinson's disturbing article that was published in 2018. This article is something so dark that even the mafia crimes became overshadowed. According to this Reno Gazette journal, in the 1800s, Chinese workers were contracted to build Truckee's railroad systems, and instead of getting paid after their hardest work, they were killed brutally, and their bodies were dumped just like the people of the town. But how the murder went is something that will disturb just about anyone. After the railroad system was built, hundreds of Chinese workers were brought together, tied, and sank to the depths of the lake. But if you thought the mysteries ended there, it didn't. This is just the start of Lake Tahoe's mysteries because the history has far too many what-ifs and unanswered questions. However, in the 1980s, a famous French explorer discovered something horrendous that he claimed the world wasn't ready for. Jacques Cousteau, a famous French explorer and diver, he explored the depths of Lake Tahoe, where he claims he saw well-preserved bodies in thousands, lake monsters, and even caverns connecting this lake with surrounding bodies. After coming safely back from the lake, Jacques Cousteau was stunned, and he said the famous line, "The world isn't ready for what I have seen." Unfortunately, no one went beyond this line, and there was no research done. But how can bodies remain preserved even after centuries? Is there a scientific phenomenon, or is there something even more mysterious? We will uncover it later in the video, but first, let's talk about even darker mysteries that make Lake Tahoe dangerous for visitors. Before we dive deep into the mystery, we must ask ourselves, what did the French explorer even see to be making such a big statement? What lies 1,644 feet down to the bottom of the lake? And are the visitors safe? Why are there active deaths happening surrounding this area? Too many mysteries remain unsolved, but let's take a deep dive and uncover them. While Lake Tahoe is one of the most beautiful places on Earth, it has its distinct history. But so far, we have talked about the stuff on the surface. However, it is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a famous story behind Lake Tahoe and a fisherman. One day as he was fishing, he snagged something in the deep water offshore, and it released quickly. He thought it must have been a regular fish that got released, only to find something much darker. Once he got the hook to the surface, he saw something on the hook. It was a literal human ear attached to the hook, and it could be related to the mafia's work that dumped those bodies on the bottom of the lake. Moreover, locals of this area have always claimed that there's an area in Lake Tahoe near the South Lake casinos called the Grave. And if you take the submarine to go down into the depths of the ocean, you would find hundreds of preserved bodies wearing clothes that are related to the early to mid-1900s. But something still doesn't make sense here. Why are bodies preserved to this date? Now let's uncover the mystery. To answer your earlier question, yes, it is possible for dead bodies to be preserved. Due to near-freezing temperatures, these bodies wouldn't decompose like they would in a warm lake. And to make things simpler to understand, you know that there are hundreds of dead bodies still preserved on cold mountains, right? The same analogy applies to the bottom of the river. The bodies would simply not decompose due to cold. And if we take a history book, we do know that Tahoe has been famously a home to many crimes and secrecies. For example, the mob was quite popular in the 60s and 70s. Frank Sinatra owned Cal Neva and had a secret tunnel according to some reports that were most famously linked to meetings between JFK, Marilyn Monroe, and himself. When we look at reports, they are endless and would not stop. But beyond the mob feud and crimes, there is an even bigger mystery, one that disturbs visitors to this date and people have been reportedly talking about. That is the mysterious creature surrounding Lake Tahoe. And while most people think of it as a single creature, upon doing our research, we found some disturbing things. Now, referring back to French explorer Jacques Cousteau and his deep dive in Lake Tahoe in the 1970s, he emerged back with no documentation and photography. Forget dead bodies. He said there were mysterious creatures and sea monsters. And while no one ever confirmed this story, the reports say otherwise. You might have heard about the Loch Ness Monster, and it is especially seen in cartoons like Scooby-Doo. But did you know that similar sea creatures have been found in the area? We have received dozens of reports since the emergence, and creepy enough, all of these reports have something in common. The reports started right from the Washoe and Paiute tribes, but even in modern times, we've seen many sightings, and we're going to take them one by one. In the mid-1950s, two off-duty police officers were once passing by Lake Tahoe on their boat. And mind you, this boat was going at a whopping 60 miles per hour, which is quite fast. But what these officers saw was something no one was ready for. According to the report, both of them saw a large black hump emerge from the water and were easily able to keep up with a boat that was going this fast. In the same year, two divers also told a story that would confirm there is something in this lake that everyone should be worried about. These divers were diving in the lake when they found an underwater cave. But what they experienced was so disturbing that all they did was run back for their lives. As they found this mysterious cave, a creature shouted out, leaving the whole sea stirred and leaving the divers in such a shock that they would never recover from it. Almost 40 years later in the 1990s, a kayaking instructor saw something even more disturbing. From a distance, he saw what seemed like a two-person kayak, and seeing that, he rushed over to the site on his speedboat, only to find that there was nothing available. And interestingly enough, there were no reports of students or the kayak missing. So what flipped? Was it some sea monster, or was it just a misunderstanding? If you thought reports end here, it's a big no. Remember the black hump we talked about? More reports came out in this century. In 2004, an off-duty bartender on the Tahoe Queen, which is a ship, captured a picture of the black hump, which he himself claimed was the top of the creature. And we're going to talk about this exact creature in a bit, so don't worry. But first, we need to look at the last report that happened in 2006. And this was the latest we could get to a report that would talk about this creature. This time, a family was vacationing near Lake Tahoe. But immediately, they saw a large, scaly-looking black hump in the water that looked like a sturgeon, but with an upside white nose. But instead of moving side to side like a reptile, it moved up and down like a mammal. If you're familiar with Lake Tahoe and the monster, you might know something called the Tahoe Tessie, also known as the monster of Lake Tahoe. So what exactly is this creature, and is it even real? You will be shocked to find out. This monster is known as Tessie, intimidating to the point where you would just shake looking at the hump. Remember a while ago when we talked about the fisherman catching a human ear on the hook? Well, a similar story has been told, but this time the fisherman caught a 3-fingered human hand. Sounds creepy enough, doesn't it? Other than locals boasting about the graveyard created by the mob, they also often talk about Tahoe Tessie, a serpent-like creature that lives in the deepest dark of the lake. For your reference, the graveyard is 900 feet under the water, but the lake itself is much deeper. Locals keep talking about a large creature that appears in June in even-numbered years. This beast is derived from Washoe Indian legend that might have been first spotted in the 19th century. If we take a look at this monster's history, it first made its headline in the San Francisco Chronicle on July 12, 1984, which was well in the even-numbered year and right after June. This headline talks about two women who saw Tahoe Tessie while they were hiking above the west seashore. As they were hiking above the shore, they spotted the creature swimming in the lake. According to her own statement, she saw the creature a total of 3 times, and it looked like a submarine. And just like dozens of other reports, her partner said that this creature had a humped back and seemed to be traveling in a whale-like manner, but lazy. 2 years after this statement, we heard from the 2 offshore police officers who claimed to see the exact same creature in the exact same manner, but this time it wasn't a lethargic creature. It was fast and was able to keep up with their boat. Thankfully, they survived. But if we look at someone who has seen this creature from the closest, it was indeed the French explorer who took a mini submarine and went down 1,600 meters, the closest anyone has ever been to this area. And to his death, he refused to release any photos or other statements. What did Jacques even find in the deep water? More dead bodies? A colony of more living dinosaurs? This legend has become so popular that people are now visiting this lake just to see if they can spot the infamous reptile-looking mammal. But amongst dozens of these reports, we have one that is often forgotten, and this might be the closest we can get to the site of Tessie. In 1897, this San Francisco socialite named I.C. Coggin had his first-hand encounter with Tessie. He talks about his narrow escape from the 14-foot wide head and shining jet black-eyed creature that looked just like a snake. More on the snakes a little later in the video, because we have something even creepier than Tessie. According to everything we have, and the Tahoe Tessie could look something like this. A huge monster that looks like a reptile but acts like a mammal. And even in this photo, it looks more than 14 feet long, which is just intimidating. If you look at this creature, it resembles too much like a snake. According to Coggan's own words, "I know that many will doubt this story, but sooner or later, his snake ship will be seen by so many that all doubt will be removed." And even back in 1897, Coggan's theory became relevant. He said that in the coming future, many people would find this creature and would be able to look at it, which is exactly what happened in the next 2 decades. However, upon doing some more research, we found that this creature could be something else. If it looks too much like a serpent, then maybe it is a sea serpent and not Tessie itself. Snakes come in all shapes and sizes, but according to what people have described, it could be a sea snake that has been haunting everyone in the lake. There is this mammoth-sized snake called Titanoboa, which is 47 feet in size, and it became extinct right after the dinosaur. Interestingly enough, we have found over 30 fossils in coal mines in Colombia, but that is not where the story ends. There is another snake that could be well within Lake Tahoe's reach. This snake has been seen near Borneo, where a snake that is more than 100 feet long has been traveling. It is called the Nibu, and locals have even taken photos of the snake. So far, we have the culprits of this situation. We have the Tahoe Tessie, Titanoboa, and the Nibu. These 3 animals are the closest we can find to what has been haunting the people of Lake Tahoe. But aside from these creatures and the dark past that they have left behind, what is Lake Tahoe like today? Today, most people visit Lake Tahoe for the sole reason of hype. I mean, it looks cool when you tell your friends that you visited a lake that's potentially haunted by some of the mysterious creatures that no one has ever been able to catch. Or maybe you can tell them that the lake has a history of hundreds of preserved people. So far, there are 2 types of people. Ones that go solely due to its hype, and the other ones that avoid it. But that doesn't mean the lake is safe to this date. An average of 7 people die in this lake every year, and it is due to cold water shock. Aside from that, there are hundreds of water rescue missions every single year. But by no means is Lake Tahoe safe, and even the authorities recommend you to never swim alone. Make a plan and research the weather situation there. While the debate about whether or not there's a Loch Ness monster like Tessie present is still there, one thing is for sure. What Coggan and the French explorers said about this place is slowly coming true, and more people are noticing that the lake is haunted with some of the darkest mysteries. Let us know in the comments whether you will visit this lake or avoid it. Lastly, if you are into more mysterious, eerie videos like these, give our channel a sub so we can keep making interesting videos like these.